The moment Emily Dawson saw the crooked wooden sign that said Willow Bend Ranch, for sale, $1, she thought it had to be a mistake, a cruel joke, or maybe a desperate man trying to hide a problem no one else wanted. But the truth hit her only seconds later when she stepped into the county office and heard the clerk whisper to another man, "Someone finally came for the cursed property." Emily wasn't superstitious, but the way they said cursed sent a cold shiver up her spine. She had been riding for 2 days straight through the Wyoming Valley, her horse River moving tired but loyal beneath her. Her last job on a cattle drive had ended badly after the foreman told her, "A woman's place ain't out on the range." She left without arguing. Emily had learned long ago that arguments never won you a bed or a warm meal. But she needed a fresh start, a place of her own, a place no one could push her out of. Now she stood in front of the courthouse clerk, dusty from travel, hat tucked under her arm, eyes sharp with the look of someone who had been disappointed too many times to hope easily. "I'm here about the listing," Emily said. "The ranch for $1." The clerk blinked at her. "Miss, I'm not sure you understand what you're buying." "I understand well enough," she answered. "Is it still available?" He rubbed his temples like he wished she had never walked in. "It is, but that ranch has driven out every owner for the last 6 years. Accidents, broken tools, animals going missing, night noises, people claiming they saw things they couldn't explain." Emily breathed slowly. She had seen worse things than strange noises. She had survived worse people, too. Whatever haunted that land, she believed she could handle it. "I'll take it." The clerk stared at her like she might be missing a part of her mind. But 20 minutes later, Emily walked out with an official deed folded in her pocket and a key hanging from a thin piece of leather. She owned a ranch, even if it was broken, empty, and cursed by whispers. As she mounted River, she felt the weight of her decision settle into her bones. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance. The ride to Willow Bend Ranch was long and lonely. The trail twisted through dry pastures, scattered pine trees, and the kind of silence that made you feel like the sky itself was watching you. The ranch finally came into view near sunset. A sagging house, a barn leaning like it had survived a windstorm, and miles of forgotten land tangled with weeds. It looked worse than she expected. But it was still hers. Emily dismounted and tied River to a post near the ranch house. The porch creaked under her boots as she pushed the front door open. Dust thick as flour covered everything. Empty bottles lay on the floor. A chair was broken in half. Old coats hung on hooks, stiff with time. This place had been left in a hurry. She spent half an hour clearing a space near the corner to sleep. She was too tired to do more. Tomorrow she'd clean. Tomorrow she'd start rebuilding. But tonight, she needed to make sure the property was safe. River needed water and shelter. She needed to know what she was dealing with. Emily grabbed her lantern and headed toward the barn. The air inside was heavy and warm, carrying the faint scent of hay and something else. Something alive. She froze. There were fresh hoofprints in the dirt. A patch of hay flattened like something had slept there recently, and manure that definitely wasn't old. Emily's heart began to hammer as she took a slow step forward. "If someone's in here," she said, voice steady, "you need to come out. I'm the new owner." She expected a drifter, or maybe a thief hiding out. What she didn't expect was the deep, powerful snort that echoed from the last stall. She lifted the lantern higher and took cautious steps toward the sound. Her fingers brushed the gun at her hip, just in case. Then she saw him. A massive stallion stood in the shadows, bigger than any horse she had ever seen. His coat was a deep copper brown with streaks of darker red, like fire trapped under his skin. His mane hung long and tangled. His ribs showed too clearly. His hooves were chipped, but his eyes were sharp and aware, focused on her with a kind of intelligence that made her stop breathing for a moment. "What in the world?" Emily whispered. The horse didn't shy, didn't kick, didn't bolt. He just watched her, calm, steady, like he had been waiting for someone to finally step inside that barn. Emily swallowed hard and lowered the lantern a bit. "Well," she murmured, "I guess I'm not alone after all." The stallion flicked his ear but didn't move. Emily studied him carefully. Whoever had owned this horse once, they hadn't treated him well. She saw old scars along his flank, a rope burn around one pastern, a mark on his shoulder that looked like a healed whip strike. Her stomach tightened with anger. "Did they abandon you?" she asked quietly. "Or did you run?" The stallion took one slow step forward, not threatening, just curious. His breath stirred the dust between them. Emily didn't move. Not yet. She knew trust with a damaged horse wasn't a gift. It was earned one soft word at a time. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said, "and I won't force you into anything. Tomorrow we'll figure this out together." Quote. When she turned to leave, she felt his eyes follow her all the way out of the barn. By the time Emily lay in her bedroll inside the house, the moonlight shining through a broken window, her mind spun with questions. Who was the stallion? Why had he stayed on the cursed ranch when everyone else had run? And why, when he looked at her, did she feel as if her life was about to change? She closed her eyes, the sound of the stallion shifting in the barn drifting through the night. Tomorrow, everything would begin. Emily woke before sunrise, her body stiff from sleeping on the dusty floor. A cold breeze slipped through the gaps in the walls, but it wasn't the chill that pushed her to her feet. It was the memory of those intelligent eyes watching her from the barn. She stepped outside with a bucket of water, heading straight for River. But even before she reached him, she heard movement coming from the barn. Heavy, steady steps. The stallion was awake. Emily paused at the barn door. "I'm coming in," she said, giving him time to settle before she entered. The stallion stood exactly where she'd seen him last night, but the morning light revealed more details. His coat was a stunning mix of copper and dark red, his mane thick but tangled, and his muscles strong beneath the neglect. He looked like a war horse, a survivor. Emily set a bucket of clean water just outside his stall. "You're free to drink," she said softly. He didn't touch it while she was near, but she didn't mind. Some horses needed time. Emily worked around him, cleaning the barn, sweeping out the old straw, repairing a broken gate. She kept her voice steady and gentle, telling him what she was doing and why. She'd learned long ago that sound could calm a wounded horse more than anything. By midday, Emily caught him nibbling hay she'd placed for him. A good sign. The real breakthrough came on the 6th morning. She was brushing River when she heard a sound behind her. A soft snort. She turned slowly. The stallion had stepped out of his stall. He stood just 10 feet away, head lowered slightly, ears forward in curiosity, not fear. Emily didn't move, didn't speak. Then, little by little, he walked toward her until he was close enough that she could feel his warm breath against her hand. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and extended her fingers slowly. He pressed his nose into her palm. It felt like the sky had opened. "Well," Emily whispered, "it's good to meet you, too." From that moment on, he followed her everywhere, at a distance at first, then closer each day. He watched her mend fences. He stood outside the house when she cooked. He waited near the well when she fetched water. It felt less like a horse watching a person, and more like a guardian watching a friend. Still, Emily didn't know his name. So she tried one. "Copper," she said one afternoon as he grazed nearby. "Fits your coat." He lifted his head and looked at her, the way he always looked, deep, steady, like he was reading her. "Copper it is," she decided. Life settled into a rhythm. Hard work, long days, careful rebuilding of a place everyone else had given up on. Emily stretched every dollar she had. She patched the roof with wood she salvaged. She fixed the corral using old posts she hauled by hand. She cooked simple meals and spent her nights studying the ranch layout by lantern. Copper stayed at her side through all of it. But not everyone was happy she was there. 2 weeks after buying the ranch, Emily rode into town for supplies. Nails, flour, salt, and a used saddle blanket she found cheap. The moment she stepped out of the general store, 3 ranch hands stood waiting near the hitching post. Their leader was a thick-shouldered man with a scar down his jaw and a smirk that made Emily's skin crawl. "You the new owner of Willow Bend?" he asked loudly, making sure half the street heard. "That's right," Emily said, keeping her voice calm. "Woman all alone out there. That's a dangerous thing." He leaned closer. "Maybe you'd be better off selling the place before something bad happens." Emily didn't flinch. Not interested. His smirk faded. He stepped closer. "Wasn't a question, sweetheart." She looked him dead in the eye. "Step any closer, and you'll find out exactly how good of a shot I am." Quote. The men behind him shifted, unsure now. The scarred man chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You'll regret staying on that land." Emily rode away with her chin high, but her heart pounded. She knew a threat when she heard one. That night, Copper wouldn't go into the barn. He stayed near the house, ears moving, muscles tense. Emily trusted his instincts. She slept with her rifle across her chest. 2 nights later, trouble arrived. She woke to Copper's sharp, urgent whinny, a sound filled with warning. Emily grabbed her rifle and ran outside. The moon was low, fog drifting across the pasture. Copper stood facing the east fence, body rigid, ears flat. Then she saw it, a shadow slipping between the trees. Then another. And another. 3 riders. They were cutting her fence. Deliberately. "Hey!" Emily shouted, raising the rifle. "Get off my land!" One rider yelled. "Should have sold when you had the chance!" They bolted, hooves pounding across the field. Emily fired a warning shot, but they disappeared into the dark. She hurried to the fence with Copper right behind her. 3 posts were cut clean through. Wire lay twisted on the ground. That wasn't mischief. That was sabotage. The next morning, Emily fixed the fence in silence, Copper standing guard like a soldier. Her hands shook with anger. Her land was being targeted. Her safety threatened. Her life invaded. As she hammered the final post into place, Copper suddenly lifted his head and let out a low, warning rumble. Emily turned and froze, a fresh boot print in the dirt. Not hers, not from last night. Someone had been here this morning, close, watching. Emily felt her stomach drop. Someone wanted her gone. And Copper wasn't just a horse now. He was her only protection, her only ally, her only family. And whatever was coming next, they would have to face it together. Emily barely slept after finding the fresh boot print. Every creak of the house made her reach for her rifle. Copper refused to rest in the barn that night. Instead, he stood right beside the front porch, head high, ears twitching at every sound drifting across the dark Wyoming land. He knew danger was coming. Emily trusted his instincts more than her own. For the next few days, she worked from sunrise to sundown, fixing fences, clearing brush, repairing the water troughs, always with Copper shadowing her like a giant copper-colored guardian. He was healing well under her care, his ribs filling out, his coat shining brighter, his eyes losing the haunted look he had when she first found him. But even as he grew stronger, the threats grew bolder. The missing tools, the cut wire, the strange sounds at night, shadows moving where no one should be. Emily was strong, but even she knew she couldn't handle an attack alone, not without Copper. On the 4th night, just after midnight, Copper's sharp, furious whinny split the darkness. Emily bolted upright. "Copper!" she whispered, grabbing her rifle. But before she could reach the door, a torch hit the side of the barn. Flames licked up the wood with terrifying speed. "No!" Emily ran outside barefoot, heart pounding. 3 riders circled the barn, throwing more torches, shouting laughter that twisted Emily's stomach. Copper was already charging toward them, ears flat, teeth bared, hooves thundering across the yard like a storm given shape. "Copper, no!" Emily shouted. But he didn't stop. He barreled into the nearest rider with earth-shaking force. The man screamed as his horse bucked violently, throwing him to the ground. Copper spun, kicking out with such power that the second rider's horse panicked and bolted. The third rider aimed a gun. Emily didn't think. She fired. The man's hat flew off as he ducked and fled, his horse disappearing into the dark. The other 2 scrambled away as well, desperate to escape the copper-colored monster guarding the ranch. Within seconds, the attackers were gone. The fire wasn't. Emily grabbed buckets, yelling, "Copper, back! Back!" as she ran toward the burning barn. Copper didn't leave her side. He stamped out, spreading flames with his hooves, using his weight to smother dangerous sparks. For nearly an hour, the two fought the fire alone. Emily's arms screamed with pain. Smoke burned her lungs. Her hands bled. But she refused to give up. When the flames finally died down, half the barn was charred, but still standing. Emily sank to her knees. Copper lowered his head and touched his nose gently to her shoulder, as if to say, "We did it! We're still here!" Emily wrapped her arms around his neck and cried into his mane. "We're not letting them win," she whispered. "Not now. Not ever." The next morning, Emily rode into town with soot still on her skin, ready to demand justice. She marched into the sheriff's office and slammed her burned glove onto his desk. "I know who attacked me," she said, "and this time I'm not walking out until you act." The sheriff leaned back, unimpressed. "Miss Dawson, you need proof, not guesses." Emily wanted to scream, but instead she said, "Then come look at the footprints, the tire tracks, the cut wire, the burnt torches." The sheriff sighed. "Miss Dawson." A voice cut in behind her. "That's enough, Lonnie." Emily turned. Mr. Thompson, the town blacksmith, one of the most respected men in Cottonwood, stood in the doorway, eyes hard as iron. "I saw the riders last night," he said. "I know who they are, and I'll testify." The sheriff paled. Within an hour, 3 warrants were written. The men who attacked her were arrested before sundown. For the first time since buying the ranch, Emily felt the weight on her chest ease slightly. People finally believed her. People were finally standing with her. Over the next months, everything changed. Neighbors started coming by to help. The general store owner gave her discounts. The sheriff apologized more than once. Even ranchers who doubted her before now tipped their hats when she rode into town. And through it all, Copper stayed by her side. His wound healed, his trust deepened, and his bond with Emily grew into something unbreakable. She rebuilt the barn completely, stronger than before. She repaired the last of the fences. She planted a garden. She even bought 2 cattle to start her herd. But the biggest change came from Copper himself. One morning, as the sun spilled golden light across the ranch, Emily walked out onto the porch with a cup of coffee. Copper was grazing near the creek, tail swishing lazily in the warm breeze. When he saw her, he lifted his head and trotted toward her, and she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to admit. He had become her family, her partner, her protector, her reason to stay. Emily knelt beside him, stroking his gleaming coat. "You saved my life," she whispered, "and I'll spend the rest of mine protecting yours." Copper pressed his forehead gently against hers. 2 souls, both abandoned, both wounded, both determined to survive. And together, they did far more than survive. They built a home. They built a life. They built a legend whispered across Wyoming for years to come. All from a $1 ranch and a copper-colored horse who refused to leave.